Rich Eisen addressed the armchair analysts and online critics head-on. Shedeur Sanders just received his opportunity, and the backlash arrived immediately. Eisen responded with a clear, point-by-point case explaining why the criticism misses the mark. If you thought Shedeur's rise was rapid, Eisen's analysis puts it in proper context. Here's what he laid out on air.
Already speaking in Cleveland high schools.
Weekend after, flying out immediately to get to work.
But his character's terrible, right? You know, and listen, oh, he interviewed bad, you know. According to who? The New York Giants? No offense, Bert. The same New York Giants that gave Daniel Jones a huge contract and let Saquon Barkley out the door. That's the intel we're trusting here?
That was for him to celebrate. He just made, I mean, look, he put in work in college. He had the privilege of being coached by his father.
Which we all would love and do.
Turned around not one, but two programs in college football. And then literally for any athlete, being drafted at the highest level is a success story in itself.
Rich Eisen delivered a direct response to the critics. He addressed the online claims reducing Shedeur Sanders to Deion Sanders' son instead of evaluating him as a quarterback on merit. Eisen challenged those assumptions and refocused the discussion on performance, preparation, and opportunity.
Say Kenny Pickett had strained his hamstring. Shedeur, they say his first day in pass, 9 for 9, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. They were just hating on this young guy.
Within minutes, Rich Eisen delivered a structured breakdown, addressing each claim with evidence and dismantling weak narratives through clear analysis. He replaced speculation with data and kept the focus on what matters: decision-making, accuracy, leadership, preparation, and game management. The reality is simple. Shedeur Sanders was not given this opportunity. He earned it through performance and consistency against real competition. He accepted the role, met the standard, and handled the moment with professionalism and urgency. No shortcuts, no favors, just results and readiness. Eisen's point was direct. Evaluate Shedeur on his work, not assumptions, and acknowledge that he has justified the opportunity on the field.
I've done it at 2 locations already, so it's simple. So that's why when people say I'm not, you know, one of the top quarterbacks or the top quarterback, because what are y'all going based off of? Because I did it year after year after year, and you see the progression. So it's like, obviously it got to be some type of external hate that you have for the family, for the last name, for anything, because I know I proved myself.
While many were still debating whether he was NFL ready, Shedeur Sanders stepped onto the practice field and operated like a clear QB1, setting protections, controlling tempo, and executing the plan. The narrative that he is just flash, media attention, or his father's influence does not hold up against his work in installs, progressions, and situational drills. What he showed was composure, efficiency, and command of the offense. He processed quickly, protected the football, and delivered on-time throws, demonstrating preparation and control.
I'm a firm believer. If I wanted Shedeur Sanders at 2, at worst at 33, of course I already think that he's better than other quarterbacks. Because that's the type of talent, that's where I would have picked him at. And if he was at 2 or 33, and he still had this same exact skill set, we would be talking about him starting and playing.
Right. Well, there'd only be 3 quarterbacks.
It'd be 3 quarterbacks, not 4.
Yeah.
But since he moved to the 5th round, that's cool. They might have to go along with it. But to me, I think if you ask who got the best tools, I'm going with Shedeur Sanders.
From the first day of camp, he was not there to get by. He arrived to lead. There was no hesitation in installs, no lapses in fundamentals, just precise timing, clean footwork, and consistent velocity to every level of the field. He managed protections, controlled cadence, and delivered in situational work, showing command rather than learning on the fly. The approach was efficient and disciplined, with attention to detail and progressions and ball placement that reflected preparation, not improvisation. At the same time, Rich Eisen addressed the narrative directly and backed it with evidence. He laid out clips, context, and performance markers to cut through speculation. Eisen emphasized that Shedeur Sanders did not step into this moment because of publicity. He built toward it through sustained work, resilience, and results. The background, media readiness, high football IQ, and a professional approach was developed over years, not days, and it translated to immediate operational control of the offense. The resistance came from familiar places. Some in the traditional guard still framed mobile quarterbacks as limited and expected the nepotism label to define him. That view did not hold up against what was on the field: composure under pressure, secure decision-making, accurate throws into tight windows, and consistent execution in red zone and 2-minute sequences. Eisen's point was clear: evaluate Shedeur Sanders on performance and readiness. The evidence shows he earned the opportunity and is meeting the standard with accountability and consistency.
Yeah, teams didn't draft him because they didn't think he was first-round talent. And the quote we played and that's on the screen, I think is flatly wrong. We all know this shouldn't have happened. Yes, it should have. It should have happened because this wasn't. Now, again, teams can be wrong. The league as a whole can be wrong. Hell, the Baltimore Ravens drafted a 25-year-old tight end before they drafted Lamar Jackson in the same draft. The die is not cast on who Shedeur Sanders.
He stated it plainly. This is not a celebrity appearance. This is a quarterback with pocket presence, leadership, and decision-making that stands on its own.
I'm about to unleash about Shedeur Sanders. I just watched what happened to Shedeur Sanders in the Cleveland Browns' third and final preseason game. And I'm outraged, I'm sickened, and I'm saddened. By the way, Shedeur continues to be treated in the National Football League now by those sorry-ass Browns and sorry-ass Kevin Stefanski.
The Cleveland Browns are once again mishandling a promising quarterback. Skip Bayless criticized the organization for failing to develop Shedeur Sanders and for misusing his skill set. He argued that the team's decisions are undermining Sanders' progress and turning a major investment into a cautionary example. Bayless pointed to inconsistent usage, questionable play calling, and a lack of clear direction as key issues limiting Sanders. He said the Browns need a defined development plan and stronger support if they expect Sanders to succeed. Skip Bayless delivered a direct, critical assessment this week. After seeing Shedeur Sanders in a Browns uniform, he argued that Cleveland is mishandling the quarterback and undermining his development. Bayless said the team's approach shows poor planning and inadequate support around Sanders. He dismissed excuses about strategy and emphasized the need for better coaching, deployment, and protection. In his view, the Browns are setting themselves up for problems before the season begins unless they establish a clear plan for Sanders. Given the team's recent decisions, his reaction is understandable. Cleveland has a history of inconsistent quarterback development. Shedeur Sanders is a premium prospect, the son of a Hall of Famer, a proven college performer, and a widely recognized figure. The organization should prioritize his reps, protection, and a clear development plan, not place him behind Dillon Gabriel as if he were a secondary option.
But I'm going to answer this question by saying Shedeur Sanders, and I'm going to tell you why. I think he's being set up to fail. That's right, I'm going to say it.
Okay.
Here we are on national television, right? There's been 11 practices, if I remember correctly. He's been starting against he's been playing against the third unit. He's fourth on the depth chart. And then suddenly you throw him into the start line, and he hasn't had any reps for the first team at all. Think about that. So you're just going to throw him to the wolves like that, huh? I mean, you know, if he had first team snaps in practice.
Yet here we are. Cleveland has one of the most publicized prospects and is handling him like a depth piece. The broader issue is the franchise's long record of quarterback instability and inconsistent development. That history colors every move they make. When the Browns draft a quarterback, fans don't anticipate a long-term answer. They brace for another reset. Shedeur Sanders should be treated as a priority, not as an afterthought behind Dillon Gabriel.
Let's give him a chance. Let's give him a chance with the play calling. You know you have an offensive line that isn't playing that well. So what do? Why not just play the short game so he can get the ball out of his hands very fast to run a competent goddamn offense? Outside of that, Shedeur has to be better in understanding that the offensive line that you're working with right now is not adequate. Why not allow the players that are competing for a job, in this instance, Shedeur Sanders, to finish off the 2-minute drill?
When Browns fans see another quarterback selected, they brace for another setback. The franchise's recent history, from Johnny Manziel's failed stint to the rocky handling of Baker Mayfield, reflects inconsistent development and short-term decision-making. Against that backdrop, Skip Bayless's reaction to Shedeur Sanders on Cleveland's roster was blunt. He argued the team is already mishandling a premium prospect by treating him as a secondary option instead of a centerpiece for the future. Bayless's position is straightforward. Sanders is not just a name, he brings proven college production, leadership traits, and significant visibility that can strengthen both the offense and the organization's broader profile. Burying him on the depth chart behind Dillon Gabriel signals a lack of a clear development plan and wastes early momentum. Instead, Bayless contends, Cleveland should establish a defined pathway, first-team practice reps, protection and personnel tailored to his strengths, deliberate play calling that accelerates processing, and measured in-game opportunities that build confidence and execution. In his view, the Browns need alignment from the front office to the coaching staff to prioritize Sanders' growth. Continuing to treat him like a depth piece risks repeating the same cycle that has undermined previous quarterbacks. Committing to a coherent plan gives Sanders and the franchise a realistic chance to convert potential into sustained performance.
He lied to us all when he said that this was going to be an open competition, a four-man open competition when it comes to the QB situation up there in Cleveland, in which, from the looks of it, all we've seen it be was a three-man race. The only people that has been getting reps in with the first team or with the veterans are Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and Dylan Gabriel. We've never seen my boy Shedeur Sanders get a chance to get in. Even with him doing the things that he has been doing up there, he has yet to get in with the...
Shedeur Sanders was caught off guard by Coach Kevin Stefanski's recent remarks, which have sparked talk of bringing in another starting quarterback. Commentators are debating whether Stefanski's comments reflect eroding confidence in Sanders or a brief lapse in judgment, but the rookie now faces intensified scrutiny over his role.
The Browns, we got an analyst that says that Shedeur Sanders should have some kind of a ban? Banishment of some kind? Come again? Say what? For what? And we've got, this would be more troubling. If I'm a Browns fan, and this is where we're going to start, potential dissension in the ranks of the front office and the coach. And over what? Quarterback.
When a program's headline quarterback suddenly becomes the subject of sideline murmurs and quiet searches for replacements, the situation is unmistakable. It's a breach of trust. Shedeur Sanders, the passer who put Colorado back in national conversations with his production and profile, has just received a clear message that his job security is in question. Coach Kevin, the assistant previously considered to be in Sanders' corner, made remarks that ignited speculation about changing quarterbacks. Fans, analysts, and even Deion Sanders are now reassessing the team's unity and its true plan for the position. The comment was no accident. It was a deliberate signal that the staff may soon elevate a backup. For perspective, Shedeur Sanders did not step into ideal conditions last season. He was sacked so often that Colorado could have dedicated a locker to every opposing edge rusher who reached him.
Could I possibly go to bat for Kevin Stefanski as a great head coach? No, I couldn't.
Could you go to bat against him, saying he's a horrible head coach?
No, I can't. I think that's why we fall in the middle. I think that's why in a lot of these discussions, and that's why a lot of the rankings, you see him right now in that 15 to 20 range, somewhere in that middle pack of NFL head coaches.
I've said earlier, Kevin Stefanski has already been given more head coaches than any coach I've ever seen in Cleveland. Starting with the decision to move on from Baker and him clearly still having another level to get to in Tampa.
Last season, Shedeur Sanders often had to operate behind an offensive line that provided minimal protection, yet he still delivered precise throws and critical drives. At times, he seemed to be carrying a struggling roster almost on his own. Despite the constant pressure, he never complained, never threatened to transfer, and never acted entitled. He remained with Colorado because he trusted the program, trusted his father, and believed in the team's larger mission. That loyalty is why Coach Kevin Stefanski's recent statement that the quarterback competition is wide open struck so sharply. The remark implies that Sanders' starting role is insecure, as though the player who absorbed countless hits while holding the offense together is simply another name competing with walk-ons and first-year athletes who are still learning the cadence. This goes beyond ordinary coach language about fostering competition. It introduces genuine uncertainty about the staff's confidence in Sanders and invites speculation that Colorado is actively assessing outside options through the transfer portal. By characterizing the position as vacant, Stefanski has planted seeds of doubt that could quickly evolve into rumors and undermine the stability of the locker room.
I'm sorry, but when it comes to quarterback, I'm going to defer to my head coach, generally speaking, especially one with Stefanski's track record and how he's viewed across the league. So this is interesting because it tells you Kevin Stefanski's not a Shedeur Sanders guy. And it also tells us who made these picks. Exactly. The Cleveland Browns made a rather awkward decision in the NFL draft, opting to take quarterback Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round well before he was expected to fly off the board. Then 2 rounds later, the Browns took fellow quarterback Shedeur Sanders. So what exactly is going on?
Discussion has begun about whether Colorado is actively evaluating another quarterback and preparing for life after Shedeur Sanders. Analysts are debating whether Coach Kevin's move is calculated strategy or a misstep that jeopardizes team stability. Sanders remains a top NFL prospect, Deion Sanders' son, and the program's public face. His highlights dominate social media and his jerseys outsell the team's victories, yet he is once again being asked to reaffirm his position. The issue is more than routine roster management. It intersects with the family dynamics that shape the program. By portraying the quarterback job as open, Coach Kevin signals to both Shedeur and Deion that the staff is willing to move on despite Sanders' stature. For Shedeur, sitting through film sessions while hearing talk of potential replacements adds an unwelcome layer of uncertainty to an otherwise proven resume. The decision may reflect a desire for a quarterback with a different profile, perhaps someone more mobile and system-oriented, rather than a dismissal of Sanders' accomplishments. The rumors have ended. The decision is public. Cleveland Browns owner Jimmy Haslam has informed every level of the organization that unless an unforeseen injury intervenes, Shedeur Sanders will start at quarterback in Week 1. The announcement is not an informal suggestion or a quiet push in the background. It is a direct order. Multiple independent reports, amplified most visibly by Colin Cowherd, confirmed that Haslam delivered the directive himself. From the owner's viewpoint, the logic is simple. No one else on the roster offers the same combination of talent, leadership, and long-term upside. Joe Flacco is approaching the twilight of his career. Kenny Pickett has shown flashes but remains inconsistent. Dylan Gabriel, taken in the 3rd round, is a developmental project. By contrast, Haslam believes Sanders can alter the franchise's trajectory immediately, and he refuses to allow internal hesitation to stall that possibility. The standoff traces back to April. General Manager Andrew Berry and head coach Kevin Stefanski entered the draft wanting a low-profile prospect who would fit quietly into the existing depth chart. They prioritized scheme familiarity, modest public attention, and a clear developmental timeline. When the board lined up, they reached for Gabriel in round 3, reasoning that an early investment would justify keeping a rookie on ice behind the veterans. But Sanders continued to slide, first through day 2, then deep into round 5. Haslam watched the names come off the board, convinced the league's bias against Deion Sanders' outspoken son was obscuring legitimate first-round talent. When Cleveland's 5th-round pick arrived and Sanders was still available, Haslam intervened. He did more than approve the choice. He overrode the original plan, making it clear that the organization would select Sanders and give him every chance to compete. From that moment on, the Browns' internal narrative splintered into 2 camps: those ready to accelerate around their owner's vision, and those still trying to protect their original approach. Once rookie minicamp began, Sanders erased much of the speculation. He commanded huddles, processed coverages quickly, and delivered throws with anticipation that belied his draft slot. Teammates noted his willingness to accept blame for missed timing, then correct the error without dramatics. While Flacco and Pickett split most first-team reps, Sanders treated limited opportunities as full-speed auditions. During organized team activities, he identified blitz looks, redirected protections, and consistently found his second read when the primary route was covered. More than one defensive veteran told local reporters that Sanders looks like the best arm in the building. That assessment forced Berry and Stefanski to reevaluate their timetable. They could no longer label Sanders a long-term project without contradicting on-field evidence. Drafting Gabriel 2 rounds earlier had provided the staff an excuse to slow roll Sanders' ascent. Coaches could point to investment cost, meeting room familiarity, and installation comfort to justify Gabriel's snap share. Yet each practice rep in which Sanders outperformed the 3rd rounder weakened that shield. Behind closed doors, position coaches began requesting more Sanders film for cut-ups, and offensive assistants quietly shifted meeting questions toward concepts the rookie already executed well. By mid-June, Berry himself started describing Sanders not as a developmental asset, but as a competitive option. Those subtle linguistic changes signaled the front office's recognition that the narrative had moved beyond their control. Haslam's history with quarterbacks is well documented. His pushes for Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, and Deshaun Watson were high-visibility swings, each driven in part by a desire to generate excitement as well as wins. Critics highlight those choices to question his evaluation track record, yet Haslam perceives Sanders differently. Where Manziel carried off-field concerns, Sanders brings a reputation for professionalism. Where Mayfield's leadership style divided veterans, Sanders' approach has united receivers and linemen. Where Watson's trade involved unprecedented controversy, Sanders arrived at minimal draft cost. Haslam sees a rare chance to capture star potential without mortgaging the future, and he is unwilling to cede that upside to cautious pacing. Cleveland's supporters, weary of revolving door quarterbacks, have rallied around Sanders with unexpected speed. Sales of customized Sanders number 2 jerseys surged within days of rookie minicamp. Training camp ticket requests spiked once local media circulated videos of Sanders making NFL-caliber anticipation throws during 7-on-7 periods. The mood in Northeast Ohio has changed from tentative hope to active belief. Longtime season ticket holders who once shrugged at preseason storylines now debate Sanders' footwork at neighborhood barbecues. Social media engagement for Brown's content has climbed, driven by highlight compilations of the rookie threading seam passes between linebackers and safeties. All of this places Kevin Stefanski in a fragile position. If he opens week 1 with a veteran starter and the offense sputters, criticism will be swift. Each stalled drive will be interpreted as evidence that he ignored the owner's edict and the fan base's intuition. Conversely, if he names Sanders the starter solely under pressure, any early struggles could be framed as proof that Sanders was rushed, further exposing Stefanski to blame. The only sustainable solution is conviction. Either stand behind a veteran with clear strategic reasoning or embrace Sanders fully and structure the offense around his strengths. Splitting the difference, rotating series, delaying first-team reps, or using vague competition language will satisfy no one and likely jeopardize locker room clarity. Sanders' personal approach has reinforced Haslam's confidence. Instead of taking post-draft downtime, he traveled to Texas to train in full Browns gear at facilities near his father's home. The leaked clip of Sanders executing footwork drills in helmet and pads wasn't a marketing ploy. It was a glimpse into a quarterback visualizing Week 1 live. Team personnel who viewed the footage recognized purposeful rehearsal, cadence calls, pocket movement against simulated pressure, and follow-through adjustments based on imagined rush lanes. Observers asked why a rookie would conduct such intense solo sessions in May. The answer is straightforward. Sanders does not view himself as a developmental pick. He considers himself the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns and prepares accordingly. On pure ability, Sanders' arm strength ranks with the league average for starters. His accuracy to the intermediate middle, an area where the Browns' current scheme generates high leverage completions, has drawn consistent praise from receivers. The primary areas still under review are blitz recognition and live bullets and timing on deep outbreaking routes versus press coverage. Those developmental checkpoints are significant, yet daily practice reps show acceleration. In contrast, Flacco's mobility limits the boot action game that Stefanski installed to help Mayfield early in his tenure. Pickett can extend plays, but struggles to attack tight windows between linebackers and safeties, an essential requirement in Cleveland schematics. Gabriel remains an unknown at NFL speed. Thus, the competitive landscape favors Sanders sooner than the coaching staff originally planned. The franchise now stands at an inflection point. Haslam's mandate, the locker room's growing support, and the fan base's enthusiasm all tilt towards Sanders. The front office's earlier strategy, anchored in patience and quiet development, is increasingly untenable. Barry's shift in messaging indicates grudging alignment, but final authority over the depth chart rests with the coaching staff, unless ownership directly intervenes on game day decisions. A move rare but not unprecedented in the NFL. Should Stefanski align with the owner and name Sanders the starter before preseason concludes, he can claim proactive vision and tailor the offense through training camp. Should he resist and open with a veteran who falters, he risks rapid loss of credibility and possibly his position. Either path carries pressure, but only one aligns with the momentum sweeping through the building. For 2 decades, the Browns have cycled quarterbacks without securing a stable star. Each new hope, whether draft pick or trade acquisition, has collapsed under injuries, inconsistency, or organizational disarray. The possibility that Sanders could finally anchor the position is not merely a football storyline. It is a potential cultural reset for a fan base defined by resilience. Haslam's insistence reflects that awareness. Cleveland needs a leader who can win on Sundays and project confidence every other day of the week. Sanders has shown he can shoulder expectations without retreating from scrutiny. That trait, more than arm talent alone, is why the owner views him as indispensable. Voluntary workouts transition to mandatory minicamp next week. If Sanders receives a substantial share of first-team snaps, observers will interpret it as the staff's acknowledgement that the competition is tilting decisively. A public declaration may not follow immediately, but every rep allocation is a signal. If, however, the staff continues funneling most top unit snaps to Flacco or Pickett, tension will escalate. Local media will question the evaluation process. National analysts will debate the merits of letting a rookie learn through live action versus controlled practice. Inside the facility, players will recognize any disconnect between performance and opportunity, and unity could fray. The Browns have reached a decisive moment. Shedeur Sanders has demonstrated the skill, poise, and work work ethic to justify starting in week 1. Jimmy Haslam has publicly positioned him as the future, and by implication the present, of the franchise. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry must either endorse that vision or brace for the consequences of delaying it. For Cleveland fans, the significance is clear. A legitimate chance to exit the cycle of quarterback uncertainty and rally behind a signal caller capable of commanding the field and galvanizing the city. Whether that opportunity is seized promptly or postponed will define the Browns' 2025 season and likely the tenure of the decision makers involved.
Shedeur is lighting it up in practice every day. You're not even a half bit curious to see what he could do with the ones. That makes no sense. And then on top of all of that, you got players going on podcasts and talking to people in the media saying this guy is really good. Like, this guy is legit. So even your peers respect you enough. How is it that the coaches can't see that? It always starts with the players, where the players like, hey, you see that? You seen that pass he threw?
The Cleveland Browns were taken by surprise when quarterback Shedeur Sanders stepped in for first-team snaps, asserting control of the drill and instantly highlighting deficiencies across the rest of the room. His confident command forced coaches to pause practice clips, reevaluate progressions, and consider immediate adjustments to the depth chart. Within minutes, discussions spread throughout the facility and online forums as fans weighed what Sanders' showing means for the current starters. The organization now faces an urgent, data-driven decision on whether Sanders should move up permanently. Shedeur Sanders arrived at Browns practice, took several first-team reps, and the entire quarterback group immediately felt the pressure. Coaches erased the whiteboard and reviewed their plans. Staff members exchanged concerned comments, and observers began asking whether Sanders was positioned to assume a larger role.
Tony, every year we see at least 1 to 2 teams. They were in last place in their division the year before. No one thought they'd be good, and then they were good. It almost seems like no one's even assuming the Browns can be that, but we see it happen every year. And I get the quarterback stuff, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. The Browns are trying to run the football, play good defense, not turn the ball over in the passing game, and try and take advantage when they can, correct? That's what they're trying to do.
That was the 2020 offense.
The Cleveland Browns are still searching for stability at quarterback. Deshaun Watson is yet to deliver consistent starter-level production that justifies his contract, and each game renews doubts about whether he can regain peak form. Behind him, rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson shows promise but remains inexperienced and unpolished. Coaches are evaluating alternatives each week and may need to adjust the depth chart if progress stalls. The roster around them is built to contend now, so ongoing uncertainty under center is increasingly costly.
As we talk about, we do believe in best player available. We do believe in positional value, and we didn't necessarily expect him to be available in the in the 5th round, and so we love adding competition to every position room and adding him to compete with the guys that are already in there. We felt like that was the appropriate thing to do.
The Browns quarterback group is unsettled. Deshaun Watson has yet to provide the reliable, high-level play his contract demands, while rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson remains promising but unpolished. Depth behind them consists mostly of veterans whose experience lies more in holding clipboards than leading offenses. The coaching staff needs an immediate answer, not a 3-year development project. Shedeur Sanders enters as that potential solution. At Colorado, he passed for more than 3,200 yards despite working behind one of college football's poorest offensive lines, consistently demonstrating poise, quick processing, and accurate ball placement under heavy pressure. Film shows steady reads and disciplined footwork, traits that offset concerns that his profile is built on family name or media attention. Cleveland viewed the signing as a low-risk, high-reward move. Early in camp, Sanders received a handful of first-team snaps intended merely as an evaluation. Those plays quickly changed practice tempo. The ball came out on time, receivers hit their landmarks, and the defense struggled to adjust. Coaches immediately expanded the review using phrases such as evaluate every option, an indication that the depth chart was no longer fixed. Watson sensed the scrutiny. Thompson-Robinson increased his urgency. Within minutes, competition in the quarterback room intensified. Sanders repeated that performance in subsequent sessions. His footwork remained clean, progression sharp, and throws firm and precise. Each strong rep forced staff to reassess the plan to keep him buried on the developmental track. The broader context magnifies the pressure. Cleveland's roster is built to contend now. Fans are weary of quarterback turnover, and the front office cannot afford another costly misstep under center. Around the league, rookie passers rarely wait multiple seasons anymore. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, and even late pick Brock Purdy established that precedent. If Watson opens the regular season and struggles, public calls for Sanders will grow, especially if the rookie flashes in preseason. Alternatively, another team could attempt to acquire him if Cleveland hesitates to elevate his role. Each scenario underscores the same reality. Sanders' emergence has turned a routine camp evaluation into a critical decision point for the franchise.
And we saw Dillon Gabriel go 11-on-11 with the first team, Shedeur Sanders go 11-on-11 with the second unit. So that was really the big wrinkle today.
Yes, and of course, it was the first time that we have seen Shedeur Sanders get any of those coveted 11-on-11 reps. Of course, again, it wasn't with the first team offense or against the first team defense, but it's progress. And that means that he's going in the right direction, that the arrow is pointing up. He's coming up the learning curve. So that's good for him. And I actually thought just overall, he had a better day than Dillon had today. He completed more passes. He was more on point. In fact, in that 11-on-11 period, he threw a near touchdown.
Desperation can push franchises toward aggressive decisions, especially when their quarterback options appear unconvincing or outdated. One scenario now emerging is that Sanders earns enough confidence to take full preseason reps with the starters, forcing Cleveland to revisit a depth chart it believed was settled at the beginning of July. His practices demonstrate that the excitement around him is grounded in measurable performance. Accurate, high-velocity passes against first-team defenses, and confident command of the huddle. Each strong outing also heightens league-wide interest. Rival scouts adjust evaluations, and general managers revisit their notes, aware that a viable young quarterback may soon become available. Inside the facility, the personnel staff must balance short-term results with long-term roster planning, knowing that an early move could reshape salary cap allocations and locker room dynamics. The pressure on Watson and Thompson Robinson escalates accordingly. Both must produce visible progress to maintain their current roles. Cleveland's recent history shows how quickly promising quarterback situations can devolve into controversy. The franchise has turned potential breakthroughs into organizational turmoil before, so observers remain cautious about how this competition will unfold.
I view things as I got time. I got time to be able to grow and mature, and be able to understand the ins and outs of the defenses and be able to get the good insight from the vets in the room. So I look at it as, a plus. And whenever, it's time for me to play.
Shedeur Sanders rolled into Browns camp and instantly made the whole practice feel like a recess pickup game. NFL vets suddenly looked like they'd forgotten the playbook and were just trying to keep up.
With that being said, I see some balls coming out of Shedeur Sanders at that game, and I'm like, kind of looks like a guy.
Yeah, I'm ready.
He can sling it.
Ready to. I see him, some of the veterans, how they talk to him, mic'd up, see what he's doing in the community.
Yep. Talking about Njoku there?
Njoku, Mike Napier. You once you see, different little interactions and things like that, I know he has the talent. We'll see. It'll be a competition that usually brings the best out of guys, especially young guys. So I'm interested to see how that quarterback situation.
Right after Shedeur Sanders tightened his cleats and the Browns settled in for what they figured was a routine camp day, the whole vibe tilted sideways. No blazing comet, no UFO touching down at midfield, just a swagger-charged quarterback striding in like he'd crashed the wrong league and thought, yeah, I'll stick around and run this show. The Browns had no clue what storm was rolling in. You'd expect an NFL team to do a quick scout, maybe pull up a highlight reel or two, but nope. They greeted Shedeur with a shrug, only to watch him seize the field on snap one and run the whole operation like a seasoned pro.
First and foremost, he's been the best quarterback in camp. Now look, Joe Flacco ain't had many opportunities. There was a whole day I saw he didn't throw the ball at all. Here's my theory on the situation. They already know who's starting in the number 2 is. They already know. Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders is already locked up. You're missing the boat, people. You're missing the boat. Your boy, Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel, oh, they're fighting.
Shedeur didn't merely clock in, he hijacked the session. One moment he's loosening his arm, the next he's roasting veteran QBs like faded names on busted draft boards. Defensive coordinators everywhere had the same gut punch reaction. Uh-oh. His pocket poise? Straight disrespectful. His timing? Psychic. And every pass left his hand like it was laser guided to its mark. While Shedeur Sanders was slicing up routes, the Browns secondary looked less like an NFL backfield and more like a gaggle of dads sprinting through a Saturday fun run. Big on enthusiasm, short on closing speed. Coaches fought the urge to slam the emergency horn. Players traded wide-eyed, "Are we serious?" stares, and someone even double-checked that a hidden camera crew wasn't about to pop out of the tunnel. But nope, this was pure Shedeur. Half cold-blooded surgeon, half highlight factory. He wasn't dropping a casual "I'm here," he was crafting a masterclass. From the first rep, the tempo changed. Shedeur Sanders accepted the snap with steady footwork, diagnosed the Browns' single high shell, and delivered a tight window seam route that forced the free safety to recover late. Throughout the period, he manipulated leverage with quick shoulder fakes, moved through full field progressions, and released on time from a balanced base, consistently putting the ball on his receiver's upfield shoulder. Cleveland's coverage struggled on multiple fronts. Safeties hesitated between deep half responsibilities and underneath support, creating voids at 15 to 20 yards. Cornerbacks and off-man were caught in trail position when Sanders used rhythm throws on three-step drops, while those who tried press technique had their inside hand neutralized by his receiver's outside releases. Linebackers widened to match shallow crossers, leaving the middle hook unguarded for pivot routes and option digs. One corner attempted a line of scrimmage jam. Sanders immediately adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade, releasing the ball before the break and rendering the press ineffective. Over the session, he showcased pocket discipline, reclimbing to maintain throwing lanes rather than drifting, and finished with a series of anticipatory throws against cover 2 cloud, fitting vertical outs between the flat and deep half defenders. Sanders' combination of rapid post-snap processing, precise ball placement, and pocket efficiency exposed coverage mismatches at every level and highlighted communication gaps in the Browns secondary. By mid-session, the Browns defensive staff clearly recognized their calls were outmatched. Every adjustment, a roll to cover 6, a simulated pressure, a late rotate to 2 high, was neutralized once Shedeur Sanders confirmed the post-snap picture. Routes that had taken weeks to script were beaten by timing and location. Comeback set at 12 yards broke open before the corner's transition. Slot seam outs dotted the void between the flat and deep half defender, and boundary receivers beat press with quick hand techniques, receiving the ball before the trail man could recover. Sanders' command was methodical. He used cadence to freeze plug blitzes, re-ID'd the mic when linebackers sugared the A-gaps, and maintained a firm base so he could reset and fire without resetting his feet. His receivers benefited from that rhythm. Top of the stem, eyes back, ball delivered on their upfield shoulder, allowing immediate transition to YAC. The Browns front tried a late stunt to compress the pocket. Sanders climbed 2 steps, re-spotted the shallow crosser, and delivered in stride, turning a potential sack into a 20-yard gain. What stood out most was how little ramp-up Sanders needed. From his first series, he processed full field concepts at tempo, cycling through progression reads without hitching. The poise under interior pressure, consistency in ball placement, and ability to manipulate zone defenders left the Browns' coordinated disguise packages ineffective and forced them into static coverage by the end of the period. In short, Sanders' efficient mechanics, rapid processing, and anticipatory accuracy rendered Cleveland's defensive game plan ineffective at every level, from pre-snap disguise to post-snap spacing.
Imagine there's many people that think Dylan Gabriel's a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. I don't care where they were drafted. If the Browns are the one team that thinks that, then I'm going to suspect it's not true. They don't know what
listen,
they're
I've
doing.
been on every quarterback evaluation for 30 years.
Right.
I never root against anybody.
Yeah.
But I'd be surprised if Dylan Gabriel's ever a legitimate starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I'd be surprised. I just don't think.
Well, then it is a wasted pick because you took him in the top 100.
Yeah, but potentially.
Yeah.
May get away with it because of Shedeur.
An edge rusher chirped at Shedeur Sanders between snaps, hoping to shake his rhythm. On the very next play, Sanders answered with a 30-yard laser, a deep dig from the boundary side that split the single high safety and the trailing corner. He hit the top of a 5-step drop, kept a firm base, and delivered on time to the receiver's outside shoulder, turning what should have been a routine rep into a sudden change explosive. From that moment on, every coverage wrinkle the Browns tried, rotating from cover 3 to quarter half, flashing a Tampa 2 shell, mugging both A-gaps, was met with a precise counter. When corners pressed, Sanders adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade. When safeties widened, he checked to a glance post. When linebackers bailed, he found the running back on a delayed option out of the backfield. Even late simulated pressures couldn't move him off his spot. He simply climbed, reset his feet, and fired. As Cleveland's defenders rotated through checks, Sanders manipulated them with cadence and eye discipline. He froze weak side safeties long enough to create intermediate windows, then feathered the ball into those lanes before help could arrive. When the Browns finally dropped 7 and matched every route, Sanders tucked the ball and converted 2 separate 3rd and 6 situations on the ground, reminding everyone that his mobility is as calculated as his arm. By the end of the session, the defensive coordinator's call sheet looked obsolete. Sanders had neutralized blitz looks, exposed spacing issues in zone, and forced the unit into static base coverage just to survive the period. in. It wasn't a camp drill anymore. It was a clinic on timing, processing speed, and controlled aggression, delivered snap after snap by a quarterback who never needed a warm-up lap to own the field.
They never planned on taking him. The problem is, like Ocho Cinco said, you got somebody that has endeared himself to the locker room. And guess what? The difference between him and Tim Tebow, the biggest one, is he can play. He can throw the ball. Tim Tebow running around being an H-back, he can throw the ball. And he's done everything he needs to do. He ain't saying nothing. He ain't rocking the boat. He ain't mad about the reps. He ain't mad about none of that. All the people out there want to see is this, like Tyler said earlier. We want to see what he can do with Jerry Jeudy.
That's it.
I want to see what he can do with David Njoku. I want to see him with Junkins. I want to see him with the first running backs. If you are cooking, if you are beating down the doors with the 3s and 4s, guess what? You deserve more.
From the first team period on, Cleveland's secondary looked a step slow. A deep third safety hesitated on a post-snap rotation, leaving Shedeur Sanders free to climb the pocket and fire a 22-yard out that arrived before the defender could plant and drive. The supporting cast around him, players fighting for roster spots, not Pro Bowl invites, benefited from his command. Sanders used tempo to control the defensive front, altered protections at the line, and located throwing lanes so quickly that one receiver didn't register the catch until he crossed the goal line. As the Browns tried new personnel groups, coverage busts multiplied. Starters slipped out for hamstring stretches while rookies rotated in, only to find the ball arriving on their blind side before they'd completed a midpoint squeeze. On a later 3rd and long, Cleveland finally closed the interior rush lanes, compressing the pocket with 3 defenders. Sanders pivoted through the traffic, stepped into a narrow escape window, and, without resetting his shoulders, whipped a no-look pass to the boundary curl for a fresh set of downs. The throw turned a potential sack into an explosive play and left the coaching staff scrambling for answers.
The people who are fascinated by Shedeur for whatever reason, whether it's his play, I guess, last year was kind of fun. If you're just like a guy who grew up like loving Deion Sanders and passed that love on down to your kids, I can see why you're like that. The one thing I will give them is you're looking at this quarterback room. If you're a fan of Shedeur and say, why can't he go beat Dylan Gabriel or Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett? So I do understand that part of it, right? Because why not? Why couldn't he be a Brown starter in October or November?
That looks like a quarterback room where everyone will get a chance to start.
So the Shedeur Sanders, I want to talk about this. So here's a prime example. Shedeur Sanders, they had 3-day mini camp for the Cleveland Browns. And now Jimmy Haslam actually has some money. The Bengals owners and the Rooneys are near the bottom of the league in net worth. But what the Browns have is what I would call the Buffalo Bills used to have this years ago, pre-Josh Allen.
What are Browns veterans saying about Shedeur Sanders behind closed doors? According to internal discussions, the feedback goes beyond casual praise. Several veterans describe his performance as franchise level. Private locker room conversations compare his command of the offense to established starters. And one senior assistant reportedly called him Sunday ready after a single walkthrough. The consensus is that front office staff and coaches have taken serious notice. Inside the Browns facility, informal conversations circulate among players and coaches. These remarks carry significant weight in personnel evaluations and often influence practice rotations. When veterans speak this strongly, the message typically reaches decision makers quickly, especially during roster planning. In short, the internal perception of Sanders is already affecting how the staff views the current quarterback depth chart.
Browns vets kind of weigh in on Shedeur Sanders and how he's been since he arrived in Cleveland, in Pound Town. And I think it's very, very important that we discuss it because it'd be really easy for these vets to, this wasn't like a on-the-record interview. This is just kind of back channels into what the vets are saying, the rumors, but the sources telling us. And we have a couple quotes, but Shedeur Sanders, Cleveland Browns, it seems like it's going well. And it's almost like you don't want to talk about it.
At the center of the growing internal buzz is Shedeur Sanders, the rookie who entered Berea with late-round expectations but is being discussed privately as a potential long-term starter. This is not a routine camp tale about an extra arm taking practice snaps. Sanders has seasoned teammates, players with playoff mileage, quietly reassessing his ceiling. Observers who overlook these conversations risk missing one of Cleveland's most deliberate personnel moves in years. Sanders is not on the roster because of his surname. The Browns reviewed their quarterback depth, weighed costs, and chose a controlled, development-oriented option they believe can stabilize the position. His presence is already changing practice dynamics. Veterans notice his pocket awareness, adjust routes to his timing, and acknowledge that he processes coverage at an advanced level for a first-year player. Leadership patterns in the huddle feel different. Sanders delivers with precision and composure that challenge defenders to reevaluate their calls. The strategic upside is clear. A 4-year rookie contract offers cap flexibility while other franchises cycle through expensive stopgaps. Coaches and front office staff view Sanders as a calculated investment, not a publicity experiment. Outside chatter still focuses on Joe Flacco's age or Kenny Pickett's development. Inside the facility, however, veterans pause film sessions to dissect Sanders' ball placement and progression speed. Position coaches highlight clips where he works through reads decisively and delivers on time, traits rarely attributed to rookies. Sanders' confidence is measured rather than theatrical. He moves as though the NFL tempo is familiar, and that calm spreads across the roster. Experienced defenders are rechecking the depth chart and asking if the quarterback competition is tighter than publicly acknowledged.
Great kid, and whether it's a following that he's earned, I mean, that's something that he's done a great job of interacting with fans, and but he is a great kid. You guys will get to know him more. He's working like crazy, just like all the guys. He's another young man. These rookies, you know, my office is downstairs. As they got to walk by my office as they come in. They come in early. And Shedeur, just like all those guys, he's in there early. He's getting his work done.
He has not yet secured the starting job. Evaluations so far come only from brief practice periods, no comeback drives, no national headlines, just steady execution in shorts and helmets. In a league that celebrates splashy debuts, Shedeur Sanders is earning trust rep by rep. Veterans typically withhold judgment until late in camp, yet several are already studying his footwork and timing, which suggests genuine respect. Inside the building, coaches sense that the Browns may have finally found a stabilizing presence at quarterback. Cleveland's recent history underscores why this matters. The team has started 9 quarterbacks over the past 2 seasons, an indicator of instability rather than depth. Sanders arrives with composure, arm strength, and a well-known surname, so any sign of readiness is magnified. Financial context also plays a role. The Browns are allocating a significant portion of the salary cap to Deshaun Watson, whose performance has not matched that investment. To manage costs, the front office signed 4 additional quarterbacks on low-impact contracts. Together, they account for far less than Watson's annual cap figure. If Sanders continues on his current trajectory, that structure could give Cleveland both competitive clarity and much-needed financial flexibility.
He's the only person who's come out and say, hey, man, this dude look kind of good, man. Let me tell you what I heard. A lot of people reaching out to players in the locker room and stuff. To me, I think this is it's a red herring. Like, I'm supposed to suspend myself to disbelief that he was going to look bad. I've never expected him to look bad to start with. The 5th round quarterback stuff, that's involving perceptions, pre-draft analysis, and other teams.
Cleveland's veterans have endured every kind of quarterback turmoil, poor reads, major injuries, shaken confidence, and sideline disputes. When a young quarterback like Shedeur Sanders steps in and appears composed rather than overwhelmed, people notice. The attention comes not just from coaches and reporters, but from the linemen and defensive leaders who have watched previous backups struggle. They are not exchanging doubts, they are sharing nods of approval. Sanders demonstrates instinctive pocket awareness, reliable accuracy, and steady poise, qualities that quickly circulate through team conversations. After years of instability under center, the Browns need someone who can remain calm and effective deep into the season. Although expectations have fallen over time, genuine interest is growing. Praise is coming from teammates who rarely commend anyone unless his performance demands it.
You can't fire the owner because he can't fire himself. Yeah, someone's head's going to roll, unfortunately, in this situation, and it's probably Stefanski and Barry.
I saw on The Athletic.
I don't think that's fair, by the way. Stefanski, that part.
I agree. I was saying the other day on my podcast that Barry should be fired. And I said I wouldn't fire Stefanski, but a couple of people made the point of saying, well, if you fire the GM, you got to give him a chance to hire his own coach, which is fair.
That's true.
So I would fire Barry. I would hire a new GM. If that GM thinks Kevin Stefanski's a good coach, wants to stick with him.
The situation in Cleveland has escalated with the NFL. Sources indicate GM Andrew Berry is prepared to move on from head coach Kevin Stefanski if he refuses to elevate Shedeur Sanders. The Browns are weighing a major quarterback change. Leadership appears to be aligning behind Sanders and pushing for immediate action. This is a high-stakes decision about control and the team's direction.
I think it's unfair for me to comment in I guess, maybe on behalf of the industry. All I can say is this, the time that we spent with Shedeur, and what he's done throughout his college career is impressive. He's an impressive young man. He's a really good quarterback. Sometimes, fit comes into play. And I'd also say this, there are 4 more rounds of the draft. And then maybe lastly, it's less about where you get picked and what you do after you get picked. That's really the most important thing. Getting to know him over the course of the spring, he has a ton of resolve.
Andrew Berry appears to be at a breaking point. Pressure from fans and within the organization to play Shedeur Sanders is intensifying. Berry is pushing for a move towards Sanders, while head coach Kevin Stefanski remains cautious about altering the depth chart. The divide is clear. One side wants acceleration, the other a measured rollout. The organization is under heavy scrutiny, and the focus has shifted to when, not if, Sanders sees the field.
Has the 4th highest odds of any head coach this season to be fired. He's clearly on the hot seat. It's been a discussion for really a couple years now, dating back to last season's 3-win season. And he's always had kind of hot and cold seasons. And now the sports books are saying he's 4th on the list. Number 1 is Mike McDaniel of the Miami Dolphins, Brian Dable of the Giants at 2, Shane Steichen at 3, and there is Kevin Stefanski plus 650 to be fired.
This has moved beyond tension to outright stubbornness. Rather than elevating Shedeur Sanders, the staff has chosen Dillon Gabriel. The current depth chart looks less like a forward plan and more like resistance to change. Fans have been clear about who they expect to see, yet the organization keeps delaying. Every week without a real evaluation of Sanders slows development and blurs accountability. Cleveland is choosing a conservative approach when a decisive decision is needed, sending a message of uncertainty to both the locker room and the city.
Now being the 3rd string quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, was that so much was made out of unbelievable. He actually made the team as the 3rd string quarterback. Like that was a big deal. Like that was somewhat of a surprise to a lot of people. He should have been the 1st pick in the draft.
Kevin Stefanski appears to be doubling down to validate his approach. Despite sustained demand from Browns fans to see Shedeur Sanders reflected in chants, merchandise, and constant discussion, he continues to keep Dillon Gabriel in front on the depth chart. The decision functions as an assertion of control rather than a response to momentum. Even with clear signals from the fan base, Stefanski is staying with Gabriel and delaying a full evaluation of Sanders. It is a deliberate choice to maintain his plan and pacing, not to accelerate change. Cleveland is prioritizing continuity over recalibration, keeping any transition to Sanders on hold.
But yeah, the Browns are in a tough spot. They have wasted. You traded a ton of high draft capital to get Deshaun Watson. You've gotten nothing out of Deshaun Watson and missed an opportunity. Who knows who they would have drafted? Now, maybe they would have screwed up those picks and the Browns would still be in bad shape.
Andrew Berry is likely frustrated watching Dillon Gabriel default to conservative throws while the offense stalls. From a football perspective, this appears to be the hill Kevin Stefanski is choosing to stand on. Keeping Gabriel ahead of Shedeur Sanders has limited the unit's explosiveness and prevented a full evaluation of a higher ceiling option. Drives end quickly, field position flips, and momentum is lost while Sanders remains on the sideline. Fan patience is wearing thin. Each ineffective series intensifies criticism and shifts scrutiny toward the coaching staff's criteria for the depth chart. With every additional snap for Gabriel, the decision reads less like an open competition and more like rigid adherence to a plan that isn't producing results. The optics are clear. A dynamic quarterback sits while a cautious approach keeps the offense in neutral. If this continues, accountability questions will grow inside and outside the building. What performance performance benchmarks keep Gabriel ahead of Sanders? When will Sanders receive first-team reps in live situations to allow a fair comparison? The front office must decide whether to preserve continuity or pivot toward a timely assessment of Sanders. The longer the current approach stays in place, the more it signals stubbornness rather than adaptation, and the more pressure mounts to realign the plan with on-field output.
I honestly see it happening if the Browns lose a bunch of games. Like if they get 5 wins or less, I see the report coming out now that Stefanski will be fired. I don't want it to happen. I want the Browns to be good, win a bunch of games. I think that they're going to be a team that is slept on and can at least get 7 wins, which is why if they don't, I see Stefanski getting all the blame for that, and there'll be a new coach in Cleveland. Because their players, to me, are there once again. We've talked about the incredible rookie class.
The approach in Cleveland lacks consistency. One week, Andrew Berry signals he wants Shedeur Sanders on the field. The next, Dillon Gabriel gets the reps and the plan stays conservative. Through it all, Kevin Stefanski shows limited urgency despite pressure on his job security. Fans are asking for an offense that can push the ball, change field position, and produce points. Instead, the unit leans on short throws and cautious sequencing. Gabriel's play keeps the ceiling low and momentum static, while a full evaluation of Sanders is postponed. The result is growing frustration and a clear disconnect between the front office, coaching staff, and expectations in the stadium.
The NFL tried to teach him and his father a lesson. You don't act like that. You don't talk like that before a draft. We'll show you how our game is played. We will watch you plummet all the way. I think he would have gone undrafted except for that owner in Cleveland. And he is the key to everything because he is something of an against-the-grain maverick owner. He's kind of a wannabe Jerry.
Fan speculation is growing. Some believe Kevin Stefanski lacks confidence in Shedeur Sanders. Others think he's prioritizing Dillon Gabriel for reasons unrelated to performance. A more extreme view claims Stefanski is manipulating outcomes to secure a buyout. Whatever the motive, the risk is clear. This approach is straining his relationship with GM Andrew Berry and alienating the fan base. Pressure is rising, Berry's patience is running out, and supporters have shifted from requests to demands. If the current plan continues, calls for a change in quarterback and accountability will intensify.
I think, honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7, they're throwing dimes, and practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna. Then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We've seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first-team guys. Then they throw Dillon Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dillon always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelce's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
you got a problem.
You have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised. When you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback, you do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelsey's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelce's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear: stabilize the system, diversify cap usage, and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
Have the faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you. You're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
The Browns' quarterback situation remains unsettled. Deshaun Watson was expected to be the long-term answer, but injuries and inconsistent play have prevented him from reaching an elite level. When the team turned to Joe Flacco after Watson's season deteriorated, Flacco immediately lifted the offense and produced results that highlighted the gap between expectations and reality. That a 39-year-old late addition could outperform a $230 million starter was not just a short-term surprise, it raised fundamental questions about roster construction and evaluation. Quarterback depth has been fragile, and the late-season surge masked broader structural problems. Jason Kelce's remarks made that clear. Cleveland is vulnerable if the starter is unavailable, cap flexibility is limited, and the offensive plan lacks a stable contingency. His critique drew attention to leadership and planning as much as on-field performance. Jimmy Haslam's strong reaction reflects the pressure on ownership. The organization has promoted a message of stability and progress, but Kelce's assessment suggested those gains are not yet durable. The path forward requires a realistic approach to the cap, a credible backup plan at quarterback, and a system that holds up regardless of personnel.